Bookends, welcome to a 10-minute book review. I'm 10. Today's book review is going to be on The Unbound by C.L. Clarke. So we like to start off every book review with a star point, as in out of 10 stars, what would this, how many stars did this particular book garner, and a rating, as in if this was a movie or a TV show, what would it be rated? So, star point out of 10 stars, this book is a 6.5. Between 2 and I, a 6.5. So not a bad read, but it is an acquired taste. We'll go over that. As for the rating, this is a definitive R. There's no way around that. A definitive R for content, for actions, for a lot of violence. Like, this is an R. So jumping right on in. The book stars two protagonists. Terrain, who is a woman who was a part of the conquered, I'll say. We'll have the conquerors and the conquered. Or the colonized and the colonizers. Well, let's say that, colonized and colonizers. So Terrain is a young lady who was stolen from her people when she was about 5 years old, and raised by colonizers to become a soldier for them. So to give this some context, this is supposed to be, I guess, an alternate past slash alternate fantasy, alternate past fantasy. The colonizers speak French, so I would say that in our world they'd probably be French, French, and the colonized, their language isn't really used too much, so I don't know where I would place them. I don't know, just from certain things that are being said, it kind of makes me feel like Morocco, but I could 100% be wrong. Of course, the places in the book are not real places, and the names of the races in the book are not real races. So, even though French is used, it's not expressly called French, if that makes any sense. But yes, Terrain has been raised from about 5 years old to, I believe she's in her late 20s, early 30s, as a soldier, and she's a really good one. She's reached the rank of lieutenant, which is something that people like her, they call the Sands, like basically the army, people who were part of the army who were colonized, don't get that far. And she wants to be a captain. Her thinking is that if she becomes a captain, it'll be better for her people. Like, her people will be able to have more of a standing within the world of the colonizers. So she's thinking, as long as I keep working for them, as long as I keep doing my best for them, as long as I keep doing what I need to show that I'm loyal to them, they will in turn allow my people to have the same rights and privileges as their people. The other person in the book, the other protagonist, is the daughter of, technically she's the daughter of the king, but the king died, and so I guess King Regent, her uncle, is on the throne at the moment. And yeah, I find it interesting that she wasn't born with a disability, but she got a disability. A horse trampled her legs, and so she became disabled. She's still able to get around, but her legs hurt, and she has, it's hard for her to walk. I like that that was put in, because a lot of people just assume that if you have a disability, you're born with it. Unless someone's missing a limb, then there's always the question of, where did that go? But there's hardly ever the question of, where did the disability come from? And some people, like myself, aren't born with disabilities, but something happens, and boom, now you can't do the things you used to do anymore. So that was some nice representation. Yes, but the princess, what she wants in life, she wants to become a queen, and she wants to take the throne back from her uncle. But in order to do that, she has to show her people that she's able to rule without more uprisings breaking out, and also being able to break down an uprising. So I don't want to give too much away in the book. Let's break down certain things in it. So why was this a 6.5? So the plot is spot on. Let's talk about what the author did great. So, character development. There is a character, I'm not going to say who it is, who we don't get to meet much in the book, and dies before we know too much about them. And the author, even though this is a peripheral character, the way the author, I don't even want to say describes, because it's not as though she's sitting there describing them. The way the author wrote how the character spoke and how the character interacted with the main character and other peripheral characters. When that character died, it hurt. And the way that they died, it hurt. So the author had the ability to make us not only care about peripheral characters, but also be saddened by their loss. So that's not easy to do, because peripheral characters are just that. They're in the background. They're just made to either advance the plot or assist the plot, but they're not really made for us to care too deeply about. And she was able to create characters that weren't even the main characters, but we cared about. Also, too, when it comes to terrain, she created an interesting uneven balance within her. So, of course, I've personally never been colonized, but my ancestors were colonized. And I love that the author showed this interesting dance, this very hard tightrope that people who are colonized have to tread on. So some of her people were rebels, right? They're called rebels because it's like, well, we won, and so if you're not going with us, these are the colonizers speaking. So we won, and if you're not doing what we want you to do, then you are rebelling and you are a rebel. Right? But these people who have been colonized are like, listen, we didn't ask for y'all to come here. We didn't invite you here, and we don't want you to stay here. We don't want to be like you. So the way to maintain their freedom is by fighting. That's how they feel. Terrain, on the other hand, has grown up with these oppressors. She was kidnapped and raised by them. And it's not a secret that she was kidnapped and raised, because everyone else around her was kidnapped and raised too by them. Her mindset is, listen, let's not fight the oppressors. They have way more than we do. They outgun us like 20 to 1. Well, let's not fight them. If we work in cooperation with them, perhaps they'll allow us to live as nicely as they do. So these are two opposing thoughts about how to create a comfortable life in an uncomfortable situation. Work with the people who are taking from you in order for them to give you some semblance of what it is you had before, or to fight the people who have taken from you and hope to get back what you had. And yeah, that was very interesting. Of course, Terrain had ambitions, but her ambitions all stemmed from the one thing of wanting to help her people. Also, it was very interesting that the author showed how little it is you can give someone. So, Terrain was saying, like, if her people would just acquiesce to their conquerors, to the people who were colonizing them, then they could have full bellies all the time. And she remembered when she was little, the first time they set like a buffet in front of her. It wasn't even a banquet, just a buffet. In front of her, she stuffed herself. The second time they did it, she gorged herself to the point where she was sick. Now, mind you, this isn't gourmet food. This is like soldier ration food, like just something above soldier rations. But because they gave her not even dignity, just food, she felt like these people are, you know, they appreciate me to some degree. Living here is better than living where I was. And they even indoctrinated her by saying, you know, these people are uncivilized. There are no gods. The gods are for uncivilized people. You are civilized. We are civilized. You've become civilized because of us. So those people back there where you came from, you should be happy that we took you away from them, because they never have enough food. And they're uncivilized. And they're not dignified. And they're all different kinds of things. Now, this may sound like a silly thing to say to someone, right? Because, you know, how would you know if someone's civilized or not if you can't even remember them, right? Sounds like a silly thing to say and a silly thing to believe. But I remember growing up when I was little, the pictures of Africa that we would get would all be like people in tribes in the middle of the forest, mud huts, people running around half naked. And the things that we were being told were, as children, by teachers, by National Geographic, what we were being told was that we should be happy. Now, mind you, they weren't saying these exact words, but by the imagery and thoughts that they were putting into us, they were conveying this to us. That we should be happy that our ancestors were the ones who were taken and made slaves. Because if we had not been taken and made slaves, we might be in a mud hut right now. In fact, there was one preacher who said recently, like a couple of years ago, that he's happy that slavery happened. It was a black man. He said he is happy that slavery happened because if it wasn't for slavery, he'd be running around in a mud hut right now. Ignorance. But anyway, as a child, we were raised to believe this. This was in school. This was on things like National Geographic. They didn't show Ghana, where there's cities and malls and houses and apartments and paved streets. They didn't show Ghana. They didn't show Nigeria, where there are skyscrapers and tech companies. And they didn't show any of that. No. They went like deep somewhere. I don't even know where they went, but they went like deep somewhere and said, this is Africa. This is how Africans look. This is how Africans live. Aren't you glad that you weren't raised in Africa? And that made us as children have this false appreciation, feeling like, okay, well, yeah, I guess slavery was bad. I don't like slavery, but at least we have running water. At least we have a bathroom that's inside our house. And then when we got a little bit older and there was a huge migration of people from Ghana into our part of New Jersey. And of course, with a huge migration, there's going to be kids. And kids are going to be going to public school or just a school period. So when we started meeting like kids who were actually from Ghana, they were like, you know, we're like, okay, well, what was it like living in a mud hut? When did you start wearing clothes? And they're looking at us like, what are you even talking about? I lived in an apartment and I've worn clothes all my life. What are you talking about? And, you know, I'm happy that my dad raised us in a certain way because we didn't make fun of them. But there were some black kids who made fun of African kids because of the things that we were learning. Like, we were learning that we were some way better than them because they came from mud huts when they really weren't in mud huts. They were in regular houses. And conversely, the African children had been learning, I guess, in Africa that they were better than the black kids in America because they had never been slaves. They were born free. Their ancestors were born free. They had always been free. So we were both learning different things, you know? And that was a way to turn people against each other. In the book, Terrain has been taught that her people, her native people, the people she was stolen from, are uncivilized and not worthy of certain things because they behave in certain ways. They believe in gods. They have traditions that don't match up with those of the colonizers. Only the ones who have acquiesced to the colonizers are able to have nice things. And so she's been raised to think like basically your people are savages. The only reason why you're not a savage is because you were raised by us. If you had been raised by them, you'd be a savage just like them. And conversely, Terrain's people are being raised to believe the ones who are taken away from us are not like us anymore. They are not the same. And we have to get rid of them just like they were one of the colonizers because they're not like us anymore. And there's a pivotal point in the book where Terrain is 100% loyal to the colonizers. But there's a point in the book where her mind kind of shifts. And I like how the author sets it up as not all at once. Wow, these people are bad. Oh no, I've been fighting for the wrong team. No, there's an entire thought process that goes through, which is realistic. Because if someone has been brainwashed their entire life that A is really B, when someone tells them that no, A is A, they're going to be like, no, A is B. Because that's what I've been told all my life, A is B. So I love that there was a train of thought that went into it, a process that went into Terrain realizing these people who are oppressing her people were also oppressing her. She knew, I'll say this, she knew to a degree that she was being oppressed, but she also thought that the oppression that she was receiving from the colonizers was better than what her life would have been if she had been left with her own people. And the reason why she thought that wasn't because it was actually true, but because that's what she had been indoctrinated with. So those are two things that the author did well. Something else that the author did well was in creating relationships. Now, just to let you know, the relationship trees in this book are a little bit confusing. Slightly confusing. But if we just concentrate only on the protagonists, just these two people, Terrain was, I don't know if she was in love or just in some sort of relationship with another soldier by the name of Pruitt. But that relationship ends up dissolving for reasons that I personally did not like, but made sense for the purpose of the book. I will say that the end relationship was not one that I wanted. The author did a good job in conveying it and structuring it and not making it insta-love. It wasn't insta-love, thankfully. It wasn't long and drawn out either, but it wasn't, oh, I saw her walk into the room and I'm in love. No, it wasn't that. It wasn't that. So there was no insta-love in this. It just wasn't the ship that I wanted to sail. It wasn't my OTP. It wasn't what I was looking for. That doesn't mean that it wasn't well written. It just wasn't what I wanted. Also, something else that was done well, I don't know if this is the author requesting this or if it was the person who did the book cover just doing it. But Terrain is not pretty. She is not beautiful. She is not in any way gorgeous. Facially, there's nothing appealing about her face. And I love that. Here's the reason why. A lot of these books like, oh, this girl was a soldier from day one. She was like a child learning how to fence. And she was a child and she was fighting and she was a soldier. No marks. No marks on the face. No marks on the body. Nothing. Now, this is supposed to be based like in maybe in the 1400s or 1500s or 1600s, like in that time period. You get cut by a sword, you're going to have some marks on you. You get cut by a sword now, you're going to have some marks on you, but there's different things that can help. So having someone who's been fighting their entire life, but also walks into the room looking like they just came from a Pantene commercial shoot, the two don't mix. How can you be a fighter for all of your life and also walk in like a supermodel? Like, it doesn't work. That doesn't happen. So I love the thought process that went into creating Terrain. I love that she has scars on her face. I love that she's a bit pockmarked. I love that she's a bit hardened because she has every reason to be hardened. They whipped her a lot. She had to fight a lot. She went to battle a lot. So by all means, she would not look like a supermodel. It's not to say that she would be the ugliest person on earth, but she would not look like a supermodel. Like, if you look at the old pictures of people who have been slaves, if you look at old pictures of people who are like in their 30s, 40s, 50s, these do not look like pretty people. They do not look like models. They look like someone who has had a hard life and is having a hard time still trying to live it. They look strong, but they look like they've had a hard time and a hard life. They don't look like Halle Berry. And I love that Terrain had a hard face, because she had a hard life and she was a soldier, so of course she's going to have scars. So I love that that went into it. Something that I didn't like was the level of cursing, though. Yeah. So this book curses, there's a lot of cursing in this book. The curses that use, I'm sorry, it's just my husband. Once again, he is not dying, no COVID. He just has allergies. Hi, Pierre. There we go. See, he alive. He good. But yeah, there's a lot of cursing in this book. The main curse words that are used repetitively are the F word and the SH word. Just over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Now, even though I was annoyed by them at first, I just thought this was the author's language. This is just how the author speaks. Some authors just like using a bunch of curse words. And I was going to DNF the book because I thought this is how the author speaks, and this is not a type of book that I would want to just read all the time. Like, I don't want to do this. Especially since I was listening to the audiobook of it, so I don't want that in my ear the whole time. But as I continued to listen, when I got to the princess's part did not have all that cursing in it. It didn't have, it didn't have all the cursing and swearing in it. And I think, I could be wrong, if I ever get a chance to speak to the author, I can always ask them. But I think that the reason why they did this was to differentiate between the thought processes between the princess and the soldiers, because the soldiers, they curse a lot. Even their inner thoughts, there's a lot of cursing, those two major words. But for the princess, there is minimal to no cursing at all. And even that's because probably even though she's been disabled and even though she's been made fun of because of her disability and things of that nature, at the end of the day, she was still a princess. She's never been a slave. She's never been whipped. She's never been raped. She's never been cut up. She's a princess. So her outlook on life, how hard or how soft she is, would differ substantially from someone who was kidnapped as a child, forced to fight, whipped, put in positions where they're going to die constantly. Her mindset and her way of communication would of course be different from someone who had to live that kind of a hard life. So although I did not like the cursing, because I really did not, I don't want to, it wasn't misplaced, I'll say that. If I'm correct in my thoughts about the reason why the author did that was because she wanted to have a clear demarcation in between the two. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to reach out to the author on Twitter. I don't know if they're going to reach back out to me, but I'm going to maybe send them a DM and see if they can clarify that. But yeah, all in all, this has been a good read. I would not recommend it for anyone under the age of 18. It's very violent and a lot of cursing. But plot-wise, character-wise, there goes my sewing kit. And implementation-wise, all those were on point. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe. Bye, Bookends.